Hey folks, it's Bob out here at Sorrento Hill. Take you on a little walk with me. You can see behind me I've got that the dining room and the kitchen wall done. I got the kitchen window in. It's done all the way up the top on the inside as well. And so I've started on the south wall, the south kitchen wall, and I've got it up about 2 feet tall now. I only have to go all the way up to there. And so I got me a tarp set up here because I had an extra easy up uh, cover. So I've got that hung up here to kind of keep the sun off of me, because in the afternoons the sun comes down right on that wall. So it looks kind of nice having that window in there. And I'll show you what it looks like on the inside here. And then of course on the inside, got the conduit all the way across, got the window in, and then started on this other wall here. Now I was going to I recorded a real neat video that showed me putting a couple more electrical boxes in. What I did on this particular wall here, this is going to have counter on it. I added this outlet and this outlet to it. So I showed you the whole process. The only thing is my microphone wasn't working, so maybe I'll put some of that in just with it silent. But what I had to do, I had some more wire and some outlets and some outlet boxes. Let me pull one of these outlets out. These outlets come 10 to a box, and when you need another number, why, I've got some extras. Now these aren't difficult to put in. In fact, it's got a deal on it. I don't know if you can see there. It says, well, let me flip it over so it's right side up. It says strip gauge. And what it is there's an actual set of markings on the side of the outlet, how far back you need to strip the wire. And if you strip the wire back to this strip gauge, what's going to happen when you put the wire underneath your clips here, it goes all the way in, but there's going to be just a little bit of wire exposed before the installation starts. The reason that's important is that way you know that there's no insulation that's caught underneath the retainer here, that you're actually clamped down good and tight on wire instead of on insulation. And now the reason why that's important is this. If an inspector comes along and he pulls an outlet out of a box and he doesn't see any insulation or any conductor there, there's a possibility that you have insulation trapped underneath this retainer. You don't want that, because insulation will not conduct electricity. And you might have just the wire touching down in here just enough that it will conduct. But the thing of it is, you might have something hooked up that draws 2 amps on a 20 amp breaker. But in order to get 120 volts, it's going to draw a lot more than 2 amps if this is loose here and you don't have a good connection. So you're going to heat your wire up, and possibly, hopefully you won't heat your wire up so much that you start a fire, the breaker will trip first. But that's why it's important to have these stripped right. And again, you strip it according to the gauge, and that way you look at the outlet and you'll actually be able to see a little bit of copper exposed. That way you know for sure, and your inspector knows for sure, that there's no insulation trapped underneath these retainers, underneath this screw, so that you don't have a bad contact. Another thing I also do before I shove this outlet in the box, there's 2 things that I follow. One is the hot always goes in the top, and then the wire that's feeding the next outlet comes out the bottom, and then when I go to my next outlet box, it goes in the top. When you follow a convention like that, you always know what's hot and what's not. and it's just a safety thing, and it's a lot easier for someone else that follows you if everybody follows the same convention. Um, Now, before I put these outlets in the box, I always do a tug test. Eh, Tug on the wire to make sure that it's good and snug underneath the screws. Reason you do that is that way you don't have a loose connection. Put my outlet up. That's going to start a fire. Another thing that I do, you see here, I've got these all zip tied together, and it just goes up over the door and then across and down into my electrical box. Now, I don't have it terminated in the electrical box because I don't have a breaker for that. I've got some extra 20 amp breakers in my breaker box, but the reason why that's not terminated is because this is a kitchen outlet, and with it being a kitchen outlet, it needs to be on a GFI. And people might say, well, Bob, you've said before that you don't have to worry about codes, and you don't have inspections, and you don't have permits and all that where you are. So you don't need to go through all that because, you know, a 20 amp breaker isn't that expensive. I think the last ones I bought, 20 amp breakers, were maybe three and a half bucks. And that's gone up quite significantly. It used to be a 20 amp breaker was like $2.50, $3, especially if you bought them in quantities. But a 20 amp GFI breaker, those are up around $30. And you say, well, you could save yourself a lot of money. Well, these are going to be in the kitchen. They could be water on the table, you know, water on the counter, water on the floor, whatever. And I just would rather use the GFI. It's code. Not only is it code, but it's safety, my wife's safety, visitor safety. I just would rather spend the extra money and put that on a GFI outlet and know that it's right and it's safe. Now you might ask, well, why are you putting so many outlets on that wall? Because I've got one by the door, and then I've got now one for the refrigerator. It's on a dedicated outlet. And now I've got 3 outlet boxes in that one wall section, and that's only a 7-foot wall. Well, that's going to be a wall where we're going to use, I mean, we'll probably have our coffee pot plugged in there. That's probably where the toaster will go. And most likely on those days when we pull out the griddle to make pancakes, that's probably the wall where we'll be making the pancakes. And by having more outlets, I don't have to worry about extension cords. And also what I'm doing is I've already got 2 circuits there, an A and a B circuit, and each one of those has 5 outlets on it, which is the max that I want to put on them. And so I don't want to put more on the same one, so I decided to put those 2 outlets on their own breaker. And I had the wire, I already had the boxes, and I had the outlets. In fact, in my box there, I've got 4 more outlets, so I could decide to put 4 more outlets somewhere if I needed to. You know, I said, well, why'd you buy so many instead of buying just what you want? Well, as soon as you buy just what you want, you find out you don't have everything that you need. And the way they price these things, it's cheaper to buy a box of 10 than it is to buy 6 or 7 individual ones. So I'm going to buy a box of 10 that's going to be cheaper than if I buy just exactly what I need. And again, like I said, chances are I buy exactly what I need. I'm going to need one more, right? Is that how your luck goes? That's how mine goes. So I've got that pulled. I'll have to buy that breaker. I'm on a stopping point now on putting cordwood in the walls because I've run out of logs that are dry enough. And I also just now used up the last of my mortar mix. I might be able to make a half a batch of mortar. So in the meantime, I've got a pile of logs that I probably maybe about 2 trailer loads of logs that to peel the bark off of to get in the kiln, and then I'll go out in a couple days and I'll cut down a few more trees to beef my pile back up. And while I'm waiting for logs to dry, it's probably going to be another week to a week and a half before they're dry enough. So in that time, I'll clean up some of my mess around here, and I'll start putting in fence posts for extending my my fence around the area here. Boy, the dogs would absolutely love that if they were actually able to come out here and join me at the house. But I don't really want them in here right now because I got too many things for them to get into, and I just don't want them up here right now. So extending the fence, that's another of the things I'll do. And of course, yeah, crawling up underneath the house and putting my getting my sewer lines roughed in, that's another thing that's on the agenda. So I've got plenty of things to do, so I'm not going to be upset that I can't do cordwood right at this moment. It is what I'd rather be doing because I really want to get as much done as I can before the weather starts turning, as far as start getting into these freezing nights. But yeah, I've got about 2 foot of the 8 foot done on that wall, so I'm a fourth of the way with that south kitchen wall. Um, so making progress and looking forward to getting that in. But I will tell you, there's one of the things that's very difficult about working on that wall right now is this. Let me walk over there and I'll show you. Um, the thing that's the most difficult is this. You get so used to being real fussy with your tuck pointing to try to make it look as nice as possible. Well, this wall right here that I'm putting in right now, there's going to be base cabinets and a refrigerator covering that up. So I don't need to do a real particular job on the tuck pointing. Just give it a quick once over just to kind of smooth it and level it, and that's all it needs. I don't need to do it 2 or 3 times to get it smooth and as possible. And it's the same way like on this wall here. You know, this is all going to be behind cabinets, and that's really hard for me to do because I tend to get real picky about it when I'm doing my tuck pointing. All right, well, that's just a quick update on where we are. Again, like I said, I did that run the wiring over for those other 2 outlets. One of the things, you know, if you decide you want to do it yourself, it's really not that difficult. Um, you know, I know people like to make it like it's a big mystery, but it's really not. The the outlets, the switches are all color coded, so you know which color wire goes under which screw. Um, Ground is green. That makes it pretty easy, so you know where your ground goes. And the switches and the outlets, they have a strip gauge on them, so you know just how far to strip the wire back to be safe. Again, make sure that you don't have any insulation underneath your fastener, so otherwise you'll get a bad connection. And don't overload. Don't try putting, you know, um, like in the old days where they'd put where half the house. You know, we lived in a house in Texas that was an older home, and the living room and the 2 bedrooms were all in the same breaker. And then the main bedroom, the master bedroom, and the kitchen, they were on the same breaker. So it was real easy if you tried doing too much at the same time to trip breakers, always tripping breakers. Fortunately, they had replaced the old box that had fuses in it with a box that had breakers in it, but it was still an annoyance. So by breaking each room out, and another thing they used to do is your lights and your outlets would all be on the same breaker. But I've gone ahead in my house. Uh, my lights, like say in the uh, bedroom, I've got an outlet or a breaker that's got my wall outlets on it, and I got another breaker that's got my lights on it. So if I should happen to trip the breaker for the wall outlets, well, I've still got lights, so I can see how to get in and out of the bedroom. So that's how I prefer to do it. It costs a little bit more to do it that way because you're spending more on wire and more on breakers, but it just makes sense. Same thing as in the kitchen is don't string so many outlets together that you're tripping them all the time. And I like to put, you know, to where outlets that are next to each other on the wall are actually on different breakers. So you can plug two heavy draw things in on consecutive outlets, but they're on different breakers. So the chance of tripping a breaker is a whole lot lower. Again, it costs a little bit more if you do it that way. It's probably not how a builder is going to build your house because it's going to cost them a little bit more to do it that way. And they're all about doing it as cheaply as they can so they make more profit. And I'm about doing it so that it's more efficient and more reliable for me because I'm not worrying about profit like a builder is. So when you do it yourself, you may take the time to do some neat little things that you're not going to find if you get a track built home because they're doing everything as cheap as they can to keep their costs down and just to meet code. So code is something that to me is the bare minimum. And code may say that you have to have your outlets, kitchen outlets, no more than 4 foot apart, but mine are 3 foot apart. And that way, with those goofy little short cords they put on all your kitchen appliances, I won't have to worry about running extension cords all over the place, which are a safety hazard and an annoyance. All right, well, I guess that's it for today. I just wanted to show you that wall that I got done and the window mounted in it. I did a video talk about a comedy of error. I did a video showing me putting the window in the wall, so you could see that putting a window in is not a real daunting task. It's not that hard to do, but problem is I was using my phone, and where I set my phone so that I could record, the sun was hitting it, and it was one of those days where it was 96 degrees with a feels like of 116. And so about 8 or 10 minutes into the video, my phone shut off. I guess because it got too much sun on it, got too hot, so lost that. Oh well. It's kind of like I lost on my video of putting those outlet boxes in. Kind of frustrating, but one of those things that you learn as you go. All right. So, anyways, don't be afraid to get out there and do something that you haven't done before. Electrical terrifies a lot of people. It's not something you have to be afraid of. You have to respect it. It's not difficult if you've got an outbuilding, a shed, or whatever that you are, even in your house. If you decide you want to add some outlets, it's not difficult to do. The information you need is on a lot of the websites. Like I said, the outlets themselves, they have a strip gauge on them. They're color coded so that you can hook the wires to the right places. Same thing with the breakers. Don't be afraid to get out there and try it if you feel confident. If you don't, then you know what? You're better off hiring somebody who's licensed to do it, and paying them the money. These 2 outlets that I put in here, if I'd have called an electrician out to put those 2 outlets in, just to run that wire and put those outlets in, which took me less than 30 minutes to run the wire and install those 2 outlets. It took me less than 30 minutes. And that was with talking while I was doing it. It would probably cost you $200 to $300 easy to have an electrician come out and do it. So, I've got some extra outlets. left over. I'll be putting those in when we get our goods moved in, household goods moved into the house. I'll have my garage building empty, and I'm going to be turning that into a workshop. So they'll go out there, because I'll be putting me a 100 amp box out there, so I can power up my all my workshop equipment in there. So don't be afraid to get out there and try something. If it's something that, like electrical, that you're afraid, that you're really afraid of doing, then go ahead and hire someone to do it. Just be aware it's going to cost some money to do. But if you've got some decent DIY skills and you can follow instructions and pay attention to detail, it's something that you can do, and you can do safely, and you can do properly. And you're not going to burn your place down, and you're not going to electrocute anybody, and you can do it just as well as somebody who's been an electrician for 20 years. And they may think that's heresy of me to say that, but you really can. All right. Well, don't be afraid to get out there and try something, do something you've never done before. Do some hard work. It's good for you, and you might just like it. This is Bob from Serenity Hill. Thanks for stopping by, and we will see you on the next one. Bye now.